I actually saw all the cop cars going crazy throughout the day, and then I kind of checked in with my partner, and we kind of looked at the news, and we're like, oh wow, this is happening. There's a crazy situation going on.
Neighbor Marco Hernandez is correct. What happened April 28th on the eastern side of Boone was a highly unusual, dangerous, chilling, and unexpected situation. Watauga County Sheriff Len Hageman says when deputies showed up to check on 61-year-old Michelle Ligon and her husband, 58-year-old George, they were ambushed.
Well, I was in front of the house, and it was just a hail of gunfire.
An armed man was inside the home, shooting at the deputies who walked in.
I didn't know how anybody could be in that amount of gunfire and not get hit. 2
deputies were hit. 36-year-old Sergeant Chris Ward and 25-year-old K-9 officer Logan Fox. The sheriff says another man with them, a Boone police officer, was able to pull Sergeant Ward outside as shots popped off. That officer was hit in his ballistic helmet. The next day, you could see bullet markings.
Prevented a tragic situation from being even worse.
Sergeant Ward was emergency flown to Johnson City, Tennessee for medical treatment. It was there he died. This 8-year veteran with the department wasn't only a deputy, he was a husband who'd married his high school sweetheart, and he was also a father. His death leaves 2 children, ages 19 and 5, without a dad.
I think your husband's going to come home, or your wife is going to come home, and it doesn't happen sometimes.
Meantime, an injured Deputy Fox remained inside the home for 12 hours. SWAT was finally able to move in and found him dead, as well as the Ligons and the alleged shooter, who the sheriff named as Isaac Barnes, Michelle Ligon's son. Deputy Fox leaves behind a fiancée. He'd been with Watauga County Sheriff's Office for 2 years. The Ligons leave behind family, friends, and a community who loved them.
They didn't deserve this. No one does. I don't know why. Only God knows why.
As for the 32-year-old shooter, Sheriff Hageman says they'd had calls about him the week leading up to the mass killing. He says there was family concern that he might do something.
I'm convinced that the attitude of the suspect was such that he was planning this, not particularly the officers, but possibly the public in general.
Even scarier, the sheriff adds, is that after the killings, deputies realized Barnes had a, quote, cache of weapons. Over a week later, no one knows exact details of what went on inside this home. The scene was left broken, glass all over the front stoop, but details from the 12-hour standoff will most likely remain a mystery. What's clear is the human loss. 2 deputies.
They show their love for us and the community by laying their lives down each day.
And a beloved couple.
I just could not believe it because she was a tender person. She was not a person that would engage in disputes and arguments.
As news spread in the hours after, law enforcement agencies across North Carolina started to respond.
Boone is, two and a half hours away, but every officer who's worked patrol has gone on a check the welfare call.
These out-of-nowhere killings became an instant, real-life reminder about the strength of the thin blue line and the fragility of life. To show support, people showed up. As the bodies of Sergeant Chris Ward and Deputy Logan Fox were taken from a hospital in Winston-Salem, 90 miles west down Highway 421 into the heart of Boone, people parked their cars, got out, held American flags in whipping wind, and put their hands to their heads in a salute.
I'm retired, but on my worst day on the job, nobody ever shot at me. And these are heroes that do the job every single day.
Boone and Blowing Rock firefighters came out too, draping a large American flag over the highway.
I think anyone who goes into the law enforcement, they just sacrifice unconditionally.
As the procession approached downtown King Street, crowds lined the curb. Many faces, but stunned silence. Nearby at the Watauga County Sheriff's Office, a memorial grows still with signs, flowers, posters, and strangers. Kevin Buchanan works for emergency services an hour outside of Boone. He came because he said he felt called to do so.
Don't take for granted the people who serve, your community. Don't take for granted the people who go out every night and they don't know if they're going to come home.
Of all the tough twists and turns through the past 8 days, one image seems to rise to the top. This. The night after the standoff, after 12 hours of chaos, after losing 2 friends and 2 members of the community, deputies standing near each other outside of the Watauga County Sheriff's Office, grabbing each other's backs, holding each other up, with their heads down, praying.